Just got a question here in regards to what you think the role and impact of young students here in Melbourne.
Very important. Obviously, young students are the most educated section of that demographic bulge that I was just talking about. And a lot of the future is in their hands. There have been some protests by students. You may have been aware of those over issues of corruption and so on, concerns about corruption. All parties have to have a youth policy. So sometimes people talk about this youth-oriented party. The truth is that all political parties in Timor-Leste really must have a youth policy because so many new voters are coming in every year. So even from last year, when there was a presidential election last year, there is a 3.8% increase in the voter roll in 1 year. That's how many 17-year-olds, because you can vote at 17 in Timor-Leste, have come on the roll even since Ramos Horta's election last April. So that's a very significant feature. And when you go through the streets of Dili, you will see all sorts of posters, and you'll see young people featuring heavily on those posters. Political parties are aware that young people are a really significant demographic in the upcoming election.
Hello, Michael. Very good to hear you. I was just wondering if you could tell us about the number of women who would be standing for the election. There was some last, and some. There was one in particular who really did very well, but didn't get across the line. So I'm just wondering about the women. Thank you.
Thanks for that question. That's a great question. One of the things about Timor-Leste is that it has a party list system. And that means when you vote as a Timorese citizen, you are selecting a party rather than an individual from a party as we do. And what that means is if party X gets 40% of the vote, they will get 40% of the seats. And then you go to the party list, and if that turns into 25 seats, you count down from the top to the bottom, and those first 25 people are elected. One of the things that lets Timor-Leste do is to make rules about the number of women who must be in those lists. And Timor-Leste has the rule that a minimum of every third candidate must be a woman. And that's the reason why Timor-Leste has a much higher proportion of women parliamentarians than neighbouring countries of ours in our region, like Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, and so on. They've inherited, well, not so much Vanuatu, but the first two, the single-member district system that we have in Australia, or they've inherited in Solomon Islands case from Britain. And this means that political parties have to choose women for winning seats, and it's a lot more difficult. So that is why you get such a high proportion of women in the Timorese parliament. To go to the other part of your question, you are talking about Berta dos Santos, I imagine, who ran from Kunto, who ran for the presidency last year and did rather well, actually, and got about 8.7% of the vote. She's from Kunto. She is not an educated person. She's not from the educated elite. She is been very successful, and there is a sense that she has been able to articulate the concerns of ordinary Timorese, some people say, much better than some of the more educated parliamentarians have. That said, there are, of course, issues with that political party that concern no less a figure than the president himself about their involvement with martial arts gangs. But just to focus on her, she is the Deputy Prime Minister. That is the most senior figure that a role that a woman has held since the restoration of independence. And then, as we saw, she did quite well in the presidential elections. It's not all good news for women, though, just to wrap that up. At local government level, the SUCO level, the community authorities, what we call local government, there is a very low rate indeed of women being successful in those roles which are closer to the more traditional power structures, which are dominated by older men. And you'll only see about 2 to 3% of SUCO chiefs being women. But at the national level, the story is much better.
Michael, if I'm not mistaken, I think there's a Greens party, which is a relatively new party. Anything about its relation and likely impacts?
There is a a Greens party, nominally, and they do actually have some policies that are around the environment. However, they are very much linked to another martial arts group, 7-7. So when the president Funda Salma-Kane made some comments about the growing role of martial arts groups in formal politics, they were referring to not only Junto but also Os Verdes. Though it does indeed, in fact, have some policies that you would describe as environmental, it seems to be also one of the political parties trying to formalise the influence of martial arts groups in politics. Os Verdes will have to, like all parties, receive 4% of the vote to get seats, and that's not easy. So while Timor is a proportional system, it's not perfectly proportional because you do have to get 4% to get any seats at all. And then if you do, then you get them proportionally. 4% is a difficult hurdle for a new party, is what I'd say. But every parliamentary election in recent times, we've seen one new party enter. Will it be them? We'll wait and see on Sunday night. But certainly there is a new Greens party, but they're not the Greens necessarily that we're used to. So we'll wait and see what they have to offer and if indeed they clear the hurdle.
Michael, it's Graham here. Could you comment on firstly Indonesian influence and then other foreign influence? Where it's coming from?
Yeah. Look, Timor-Leste is very good at balancing its relationships with big neighbours, and it's had to learn that the hard way over many years. So Timor-Leste is good at balancing the relationship with Indonesia, which is very important, with the relationship with Australia, which is also very important, and indeed the relationship with China is also very important. And one of the ways it does that is the historical relationship with the Portuguese-speaking countries. You know, that's one that offsets that kind of potential dependence on the big neighbours that surround it. So when people start wondering, oh, you know, why did they choose the Portuguese language and so on, and why are they part of the CPLP? Well, you know, that gives them a certain amount of independence in relation to the two rather problematic countries in their history. That said, don't mistake what I'm saying. Those relationships are absolutely critical to Timor-Leste. But Timor-Leste has a habit of being friends to all because it doesn't want to become dependent on any particular one country, because that has not had a good history for Timor-Leste. So they have a friends with all approach. They certainly value the relationship with Indonesia, and that is why all parties are so keen on joining ASEAN. Sometimes you'll see analyses about why join ASEAN, and when you look at the case for joining ASEAN, it's not necessarily that strong on a number of economic fronts. But it does come with non-interference pact, which of course, given Timorese history, is something they would value very highly. In terms of influence from other countries, well, we've seen a bit of a sorry history in some respects, though with some great highlights, some very big positives. In 1999, the relationship with Australia, and we saw that in the case of witness Payne Bernard only recently, with the revelations of spying on the Timorese negotiating team. Now, in the end, after a long-running maritime boundary campaign, that has certainly improved the relationship since the maritime boundary was established between Australia and Timor-Leste. Australian-Timor-Leste relations are at a peak, and we hope that they stay that way. But they haven't always had a great history. But I think the bottom line to your question, and I've just lost power here in Dili, Ahimate. So I'm having a few challenges with you guys. I'm going to step outside. I'm in the dark. The bottom line is that Timor-Leste is very good at maintaining friends with all approach to foreign policy.
Okay. How do you see what is the maturity level in military in terms of professionalism in response to the political dynamic that happened right now? Thank you.
Is that question about professionalism about the electoral administration?
Yes.
Thank you. That's a good question. Excellent. Timor-Leste is blessed with very good electoral administration agencies. The technical secretariat for electoral administration is outstanding. The National Council for Elections is also excellent. They have an independent, well-resourced, well-organised electoral administration, and they will signal in advance if they think there's going to be any problems. We have electoral observers here in Timor, which is a great thing. I'm going to be one of them, and many of the people you know are doing it as well. Timor very much values that, but I can assure you it's a very reliable system, and one can't say before the election day, but in previous elections where I've been here since 2007, always been a free and fair election. Well-organised electoral administration. We can have a lot of confidence in it, and they've been running the show on their own for some time now, and Timorese electoral administration is very reliable. So I hope we'll see the same on Sunday. I expect that we will.